The tower one, as you were saying.
Robert Ghazi, I can see you on screen. You are District Liaison Officer. You were there.
And Eve was there. I think
And
Eve would like
there.
to say a couple of... Eve organised it.
Oh, Eve organised it, okay.
Yeah. We were both there, obviously, as was, you know, I want to say really a huge thank you to Chicago for actually doing all the photography and the videos. Amazing. And also Doug Wills has been tremendous in his support for publicising this. We had Robert, obviously, was there helping with driving. Clive was there, and so was Colleen. But very quickly, this has gone global, actually. We've had a lot on social media. It's in the Metro today, and there's other publications that it will be in. But basically, you know, publicising Rotary's campaign to rid the world of polio. And the good news that we've had just 2 cases of wild polio virus this year, one in Pakistan and one in Afghanistan. So we are close to fulfilling Rotary's goal of a polio-free world, but we mustn't give up now. We've got to keep on until we finish the job. So it was amazing, wasn't it? For those that were there, lighting up the tower with in purple, the White Tower, and also beaming our End Polio Now logo and the Purple for Polio logo onto the tower as well. So we did Facebook Lives and lots of stuff on social media, and it will be in the media as well today.
And they let you out as well.
Didn't they, Robert? It was a challenge.
It was a challenge, was it? Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And then upcoming events, we've got the International Gala dinner on the 6th of November. And so inviting, Hugh's asked me to make sure we ask for any gifts to the raffle. And then we've got the Christmas event coming up. And again, we're looking for any donations you can give either in cash or in items for the tombola. So, brand new, apparently. And then there was a very good paper put out by Honey on the, I can't see that she's here today, but on the Billion Seed Challenge.
No, she's not here today. She's not on Zoom anyway, Ian.
And I don't know if anybody wants to speak on that, but it's a very good initiative to plant as many seeds as we can. I think we're looking at next Saturday as a possible date to do it. A notice has gone out, but I hope members will support that. And then we have Nabil Al-Hadari, who is returning to the club. So we want to introduce him as a returning member. If you'd like to come up here, Nabil. We're delighted to see you here, as we often do, and we're delighted to welcome you back as a member of the club.
Thank you very much.
So I don't know if you want to say something very quickly to the...
Yes, it's great to meet a Rotarian in our great Rotary Club. This is my last book, Tolerance in Literature, Philosophy and the Classic, that just I signed in Dubai and Washington, D.C. And I am proud that I gave a lecture here 2013, Tolerance, and I bring Bayan Sami Abdul Rahman here to give a talk about Kurdistan, Iraq, to establish our Rotary Club in Kurdistan, Iraq. And I am more than happy to meet a Rotarian and Vice President and a great Rotary Club. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. And then, Tim, you're going to introduce...
Happy to have a mix. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. That's on Zoom and in the room. It's my pleasure to introduce Ron Farah, who's from the Rotary Club of Cedars in Lebanon. This is a publication, publicity for our annual dinner on the 6th of November at the East India Club. And I would encourage people either to join us on the night or to actually donate, because we really are donating for a very good cause. So Ron, I won't go on anymore. I leave it up to you. I know you're going to be supported by Jana Karim. So please hand over to you, Ron, and you can tell us what's going on in Lebanon and why this is so important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us this time in this prestigious club. My name is Ron Farah, and I've been Rotarian for 40 years now. I've chartered 2 different clubs. I've met for 1 year in a club in New Jersey, United States. We have a problem in Lebanon since now 2 years, but I will let Jana talk about it. Jana is a member of Rotary Club Beirut Cedars. She's a Beirut qualified attorney with her own law office. She's enrolled in an LLM at Queen Mary University of London in Technology, Media and Telecommunication. She was awarded the Sir Royston Miles Scholarship. She also worked over 2 years in international arbitration in Paris. Over to you, Jana, to explain the situation in Lebanon. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing fine. I'm going to start by explaining the situation that is really catastrophic in Beirut and in Lebanon. So for starters, the latest UN report said that more than 75% of the Lebanese people are living under the poverty line. More than 70% of young children are dying or sleeping on an empty stomach. There is more than 50% of unemployment in this small country. Lately, there is no electricity, no fuel, a very high shortage in water. Our virtual currency rate is 1,507.5 for the dollars, but this is not the real value it has, because on the black market, its real value is more than 20,000 Lebanese pounds, which means that the minimum wage, the minimum Lebanese wage, it's 675,000 Lebanese pounds, meaning something that is pretty close, approximately 20 pounds. So this is the Lebanese minimum wage today, which is, it's the worst in the world, actually, in terms of numbers. So how can I explain the Lebanese crisis? 2.5 years ago, it started with the banks. So we were going to the banks, and the banks were telling all Lebanese people, well, you can't withdraw your money, you can only take a very small sum, which resulted in a sort of haircut that is higher than 90%, along with the huge devaluation and hyperinflation that we are living and that is getting worse by the day. So how can I explain this? No electricity, shortage of milk, shortage of fuel, shortage of many basic needs. Well, I can explain it in that economic term. The Lebanese Central Bank, that's role is to regulate the currency, used to offer and provide subsidies for Lebanese companies to be able, to import all of sorts of basic needs, like baby formula, wheat, basic food, everything that we need. But at some point during the month of May and June, this stopped, because obviously, and as we know now everywhere in the news, the central bank has a huge debt of many billions that has increased also after the Beirut blast, and is now, a few months back, unable to provide anything. So all of this created this huge healthcare crisis, electricity crisis, fuel crisis, all sorts of economic crisis that led us to this stage that is sort of a stage of misery and poverty, increasing poverty. So today I'm, if I may say, trying to encourage or expose a humanitarian case that is now the worst in the world and is getting worse, to fellow Rotarians and to human people. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Jenna. Ron, I think that we've covered what we wanted to say, that the situation in Lebanon is dire and we need baby milk. That is the crucial element that we're trying to raise money for. So I ask you to support us on Saturday or donate. And that's what we're looking for. And then we'll buy the milk and we'll ship it out to Lebanon. We've got preferential rates and we can get it out there around the import, let's say, restrictions that they have in Lebanon. So that will help us. And I'm now going to hand over to Ian for a few more words. But thank you very much, Cedars, for giving us this insight.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a few further tasks. One, I forgot to ask any visits to clubs other than Redbridge. I can't see that. Do we need to go back onto view now? Can't see everybody. Gallery, there we go. Oh, managed to do it. So apart from Redbridge, do we have any other visits to clubs?
I went to Rotary Club of Colombo last Thursday.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. So did you and Janet and Chicago.
They did, yes.
Unfortunately, I couldn't get there, but I believe it was a very interesting meeting. Good. And then do we have any visitors attending today? I don't know that we have any in the room from other clubs. No, anybody from on the Zoom? Oh, Rosie.
Did you say you went to the Club of Colombo? Is that in
Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Actually,
they got there and back in the same day. It's incredible.
We did. Amazing.
They zoomed there and back. But there we are. And then there's two ladies we mustn't forget. One is a birthday. Candy's got her birthday on the 27th. It's her birthday. Another lady who refused to accept the Oldie of the Year award, of course, Her Majesty the Queen, to whom we must give a toast. Her Majesty the Queen.
The Queen.
The Queen. And then I think I've completed everything. I don't think there's anything I've missed out, is there, Clive? That,
No, I think you're there, Ian. Thank you.
Really good. So I can hand over to you.
All right. Let's have speaker again.
Yeah.
Can we have the speaker? Okay. It's my pleasure again to come and welcome the speaker. The speaker is Georgia Richards. She is Australian. Welcome. She gained a BSc in biomedical science and first-class honours in pharmacology. Oh, God.
Pharmacology, Tim.
Pharmacology, that's right. Thank you, Clive. From the University of Queensland, Australia in 2016. She was awarded the Australian Woman of the Future Award at that time. Georgia is now a post-doctoral research fellow at the Global Centre on Healthcare and Urbanisation and an honorary researcher and tutor at the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine. She has published a wide range of papers and now works in Oxford and London on, she calls it the Healthy Cities Project. So she's going to explain to us what she does, how she came from a Rotary scholar to where she is today. Georgia, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Hello, everyone on Zoom, and a special hello to Clive.
Thank you, Georgia. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm just going to share my screen.
Yep, it's coming up.
Fantastic. Great, excellent. I also just want to say I have a video coming on, so you might need to mute your on Zoom. You might need to mute your microphones in order to hear that. But thank you so much, Tim, for that lovely warm introduction. It's great to be here this afternoon, so thank you for having me. As Tim said, my name's Georgia, and I was a Global Grants Scholar from 2017 to 2019. And I'll share a little bit about my journey and how I came to be here today. But before I do that, I think it's best to explain sort of who I am and where I've come from, to explain why I do what I do. I think that's the most important part. So let's hope this works for us. Let me try from here. It did work before, so I have faith. Oh. Okay, I'll just have to play it from here. I hope that's large enough. Sorry. Last chance. Okay, so that video is saying that it was school children and we had to put images of these professionals. Oh, now it's working. And 65 images were drawn and 5 were women. And it's talking about between the ages of 5 and 7 is when young children start to form these gender stereotypes of what we believe are these professionals. And while things are improving around STEM, so STEM is science, engineering, technology, medicine, and these things are improving. So nearly half of A-levels or at universities, these statistics are improving. But as we go down the line to business and leadership positions, and these numbers of women in leadership roles is quite small. And this is what gets me out of bed every day, because I do have role models. And I've faced this in many examples in my time in Oxford. I was at a conference in 2018. I was the only woman at the table, and this is often what happens in Oxford. But it's something about giving women giving young girls the confidence to be that only woman at the table, so we can improve those statistics. And through that, I go to, this is my local school. When I was back in Australia, I went to go and talk to the girls about what is being a scientist like and how they can go and do this themselves. And I would have been one of those statistics when I was 5. This is me doing ballet. I thought I'd grow up to be a dancer, but because of many reasons, I decided to start studying science. And I want to show other young girls that this is what they can do as well. So my journey, I did study at the University of Queensland in Australia. I did science, biomedicine and pharmacology, as Tim said. And it was while I was studying my science degree, I was working in a pharmacy. My brother's a pharmacist and he said, come and work part-time while you're studying. And I started getting really interested in how people were taking medicines for pain, and not just short-term pain, but long-term pain conditions over time. So these pain drugs are called opioids, which is where sort of my interest in how we treat pain started. I then, while I was studying, went to the US and studied at the University of Florida for 6 months. I really got to see how the US was dealing with this pain crisis, or this opioid crisis. As they treat pain, and they have a very different medical system, but the advertising for drugs and that constant push on taking pain medications was really insightful. I then graduated from my degree and I went and spent some time volunteering in Thailand in a rural hospital in Chiang Mai. And it was also then very different to the US in how they culturally treat and manage pain. And they have really no access to pain medication. So that sort of brought together my interest in opioids. And I went and did an honors research year where I studied how we treat and manage pain. And I did a big, large study. You don't need to read those words. But I worked in a pain clinic, and we found that we compared patients that took opioids and patients that didn't take opioids. And when we did all of these assessments, those that took opioids had no difference in their outcomes than those that did take opioids, which told us that these medications aren't actually that effective. And it was my time in the clinic working with the pain consultant, seeing how they prescribe and treat pain, and then being a scientist and looking at the evidence and seeing the evidence is telling us not to prescribe. Why do we have this issue around how we treat and how we what the evidence is saying? And this is where my interest in evidence-based medicine came, and why I wanted to go on and do my PhD in evidence-based medicine. So after I graduated from science and my research, I went and worked at the Rotary Medical Research Foundation. It's a foundation based in Brisbane. It's working with military veterans who have come back after their time abroad. And I was working with contemporary military veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan who were being treated for PTSD. And a lot of these veterans also had chronic pain and were also taking opioids. So being young and naive, I thought, well, I want to apply for research money to investigate this further in the veteran population in Australia. All my applications got rejected. And so being persistent, I had a colleague say to me, she was actually at the hairdressers and she was reading the Australian Women's Weekly magazine, which is the biggest magazine in Australia. It features lots of famous British people. And she found this competition called the Woman of the Future competition. And she said, Georgia, you're so passionate about what you do, you must apply. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I'm just finished my science degree. I'm no one. How would I ever, why would I apply for such a competition? But the Sydney head office called me and I was shortlisted as one of the top 15 recipients for this award. I flew down to Sydney. I did lots of interviews. And then in August of 2016, I received Woman of the Future Award. And when I did receive the award, I had to speak to a room full of 100 influential women in Australia. So that was a very interesting moment. I also had to learn how to dress for magazines. So they did a photo shoot, which they definitely don't teach you that in science. They don't teach you how to prepare for media influx. But most importantly, this award, while I was in a magazine, it did 2 really important things. One, it raised the profile of chronic pain because it's 1 in 5 people have chronic pain, and it gave a platform to talk about chronic pain. And it also gave a platform to talk to young girls about doing science. And that's when I started going around to schools and talking in schools about you can do science too, and it's not in a lab, it's being in a red dress in a magazine as well. So that award gave me, it was funded by the Women's Week and Qantas, so it gave me a travel grant. And that's how I flew to Oxford, flew to the UK for the first time, and went to the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine and applied for my PhD. And this is where Rotary came to help. It's very difficult to get funding to study at Oxford, particularly as an international student. So I applied for various different scholarships, and Rotary was the first group to come through and say, yes, they would fund my studies at Oxford. So I thought I would mention Rotary has 6 areas of focus. I was funded through a global grant under the disease prevention and treatment aspect, and that was for the first 2 years of my studies in Oxford. My district are District 9630, which is in Brisbane, where I'm from, as well as District 9710 in Canberra. And how I learned about Rotary, which is a question that often comes up, is my grandfather, before I was born, was a Rotarian. He was a Rotarian in the Club of Cleveland in Brisbane. And also, later on in life, I found out that my mum herself was the strawberry queen for the Rotary Club of Cleveland. And I put this photo up when she came to see a talk and she nearly fell over, but she was about 19 in this photo. This was in 1982. She was dubbed Queen Kathy, but she raised over $17,000 back in 1982. So that was a lot of money back then. And she was for a charity event in our my grandfather's local community. So my ties to Rotary do go back for some time. So I always knew about Rotary growing up. And it was this connection that led me to sort of investigate how Rotary could help in my studies as well. Back last year, my mum, when life was normal, she did travel from Australia to the UK and got to see me speak when I was at a Rotary event at the Paul Harris Fellows Lunch in 2020 in February. So that was the District 1090's annual event for Paul Harris, and I was the keynote speaker there. But during my time as a Rotary scholar, I've spoken at about 18 clubs, both in Australia and the UK, and slowly making my way. It's great to be here in London now. So spoke at various different clubs, as well as going out to various Rotary events throughout the calendar year, as different clubs host different events and volunteering where possible. We also were very well looked after in District 1090. They put on lots of social events for us. So this is a walking tour with one of the local Rotarians. We did a great tour of Oxford. We went to Blenheim Palace. We went to Windsor Castle. We got a tour of Eton College. And we've got to see much of the UK through the Rotary connection as well. And this was another event that I happened to be the only one of the students around at the time that this was hosted, but this was the donor event held at Oriel College in Oxford. And the president of the Rotary Foundation, or the CEO, sorry, of the Rotary International is there in the front row. So I got to meet him, as well as Professor Louise Richardson, who's the Vice Chancellor of Oxford, the first Vice Chancellor of Oxford in 900 years. It's a woman, as well as she was also a Rotary scholar. So it was a nice sort of circle to have that experience as well. But the most important thing that Rotary did is it let me get my Doctor of Philosophy from Oxford. So in May of this year, I defended my thesis, and that all went well, although it was on Zoom. So I now have my doctorate from Oxford, which has now allowed me to go on and do further research, study and teach, research and teaching. I promised him I wouldn't go into the details of my opioid, so my thesis was on opioids. I have summarized the 50,000 words in one nice website on the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine website page with various figures, and it's all succinct there. So I did do 6 different studies into the global and the national use of opioids in the UK. So that's there, and I will leave it at that. But I'll talk now briefly about my work I do. So from finishing my PhD, I now am a postdoctoral research fellow, which means you finish a PhD, so you become post-PhD, postdoctoral. And I work at the new centre called the Global Centre on Healthcare and Urbanisation. And this is based at Kellogg College in Oxford. This centre was launched in 2019 to bring together people with expertise in healthcare with people with expertise in urban design, urban planning. And this started just before COVID became an issue, but it's now actually looking at some really important issues that we're facing around the world. Our centre's main task at the moment is working on a project on healthy cities. And this is a commission on creating healthy cities, which is led by Lord Richard Best. He's the Commission Chair, and our international chair is Lord Crisp. And I'm tasked with doing the research for this commission. And we're trying to look at what interventions improve the health of cities and how we can prevent lockdowns in the future. So this report for the Commission on Creating Healthy Cities will come out in summer of next year. And my days are spent doing this, as well as teaching and supervising for the Oxford Medical School. Our centre also has a close partnership with the Prince's Foundation, or the Prince's Trust. This is just before lockdown, got to meet His Royal Highness, and I know that the club has lots of affiliations with many royal members of the family. So this was great to meet Prince Charles and talk about the work we're doing with his funding. And also, when Clive did send me an email about doing this talk, I was actually up in Dumfries House in Scotland at the Prince's Foundation. You can't see our small team of 5, but that's us in the Global Centre at Dumfries House talking to the Prince's Foundation about where we're going to go for the next 12 months. So to finish, I wanted to briefly touch on a final thing I'm still doing with Rotary, which is through a great friend, Gordon Hughes, who is a Rotarian in the Rotary Club of Farringdon, and Douglas Dalrymple, who's also was my host when I was a Rotary Scholar. And it was over a Christmas lunch, we were talking about what is a global grant and who gets global grants. And it's really mostly people from high income countries like myself that have the opportunity, who have already studied a bachelor, but then have the opportunity to go on and study higher education. And there's a real gap in this because a lot of people from lower middle income countries aren't global scholars because they haven't had the opportunity to study at university. So we started brainstorming and talking about how could we fix this problem. And we decided to create a new scholarship called the Rotary Partnership for Education, which focuses on mentoring and funding for from students from low-income countries. Just to say a little bit about how this is different from a global grant scholarship. So rather than funding graduate students who had done a BSc to go and study, who are mostly from high-income countries, it focuses on funding young students from low-income countries. And this can be any type of education. It can be primary school, high school, college, universities. There's no strict guidelines on what type of education this is. It's any form of education. The second difference is that it's to support students specifically to study in their home country and not to go abroad. The global grant is to go outside of your home country. And this is to build up the local economy and the local education in the home country. And to do a cost comparison, the global grant scholars get $30,000 US a year. And this would then fund, one global grant scholar would fund the equivalent of 12 students on the Rotary Partnership for Education program. So you're getting a lot more for your money when you look at it that way. We started a pilot program at the end of 2019 where we are working with, the main function of this scholarship is it works with local Rotary clubs in the local areas that we're focusing on. So the Club of Farringdon already have connections with Horak, which is a orphanage in Nepal, in Kathmandu. And so it was through that partnership in Nepal that we then started this pilot program. The program is open to having people that are full sponsors, who are donors, who are business partners, mentors, ambassadors, and general donations. And so far we've funded 5 high school students in Ghana, and this is through a partnership with the Action Through Enterprise Group. And we've also funded 5 college students in Kathmandu and 3 university students in Nepal through the orphanage there. So this is just to sort of to say this is what this project is active and going on, and if anyone is interested, we'd certainly welcome more contributions, and all the details are on the Rotary Club of Farringdon's website. So to finish, I'd like to thank my sponsoring districts, 9710, 9630 in Australia, my host district 1090, and also the Rotary Foundation and the Rotary Club of London for having me. It's been a pleasure. And also happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Georgia, can I just mention one point, that the Rotary Club of London also supports FORAC. We do the infrastructure build, where Farringdon does all the education.
There you
so
go.
It's a combined effort in that respect. Anyway.
There we go. I've also just realized, I think to all the Zoom members, have I not shared the screen?
Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
You got rid of me.
Plab, you should have told me.
Don't worry. The video sort of worked, and then we didn't get the rest. But it doesn't matter because we understood what you were talking about, so that's fine.
Fantastic.
Short period of time.
Right.
Yes, I'd happily take any questions.
Okay. I've got one. I've got Eve. Robert got a question. Eve, do you want to? Your hand is raised. Can I say, if you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself or raise a hand. Those of you who are on Zoom, so I know that you wish to ask a question. Eve, do you wish to ask a question, please?
Thanks very much. And that was a brilliant presentation. And as a fellow Rotary scholar, I send my greetings to you. And I was also at that Oriel College event with Robert. So we became members of the Quest Society. So it's great that we were there together. Quick couple of questions. I mean, when you're talking about this pilot you're doing, and you mentioned Farringdon Club, I just wondered where that was, because obviously we have Farringdon in London, but I don't believe we have a Rotary Club there. You know, how obviously that's a fantastic way, because there has been criticism about scholars being from the more wealthy families, and I think that's a fabulous way of actually spreading our grant money really to less advantaged people. And second of all, you were also talking about how to prevent future lockdowns with the pandemic, and I just wondered how you were working on that, because obviously, you know, we are in a situation where we had nearly 1 million people in England with COVID. That's 1 in 55 people in the last week. So and warnings that we could be going into lockdown again from medical experts. So two separate questions.
Great. So I'll start with the first question about the Farringdon question. So that's the Rotary Club of Farringdon, which is in Farringdon, which is Oxfordshire. Yes. So not in London. And the Rotary Club of Farringdon was my host club when I was a Rotary scholar. So I was with them for 2 years, and then I've kept in touch and kept that partnership over the years. So it's in the Rotary Club of Farringdon, but it's also just clubs in District 1090 have also contributed to the partnership, and it's very open to, you know, to be hosted anywhere and to have contributions across Rotary. I'd love to, you know, take it to Australia, or, you know, we want to make it global. So it's very open to being across Rotary internationally as well. And that's why the partnerships are so important for that. The second question on preventing lockdowns. So just to say to that, there's a big difference between evidence and what policymakers do. So we have no control over lockdowns. My advisor, Carl Hennigan, he is constantly talking with politicians about lockdowns and how we can prevent them. Our research is purely to provide politicians or policymakers with the evidence to say, if you increase green spaces, if you improve ventilation, if you improve how you design a city, if you make people ride their bike rather than get the tube, all these sort of things, which are quite hard behavioral interventions, but also design interventions, we could reduce transmission and go back to living a more normal life. So we are conducting a big, large review into the evidence, and we're providing policymakers with the evidence, but we have no control over what they're going to do policy-wise. That's a whole nother PhD.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
I think you had another question. Did you?
Have you got one in the room, Ian? I've got some more. No. Oh, Rosie, I believe you wish to ask a question.
Sorry, Tim.
Could I just ask, Georgia, the one I asked you earlier on, what is the situation with opioids in the UK?
Great question. Already prepared an answer. No. So my PhD was looking at that specific question. It was saying in the US, there's they call it an opioid crisis. President Donald Trump came out saying there's an opioid crisis in the US. The way they defined that was the number of overdose deaths, the number of people dying from overdoses from an opioid in the US. In the UK, the picture is a little bit different because of the National Health System and the NHS. What happened in the US is they started prescribing a lot, And then they said no more prescribing. They made it really hard for doctors to prescribe opioids, which then led to everyone, well, a lot of the people who were addicted to these medications for various reasons, which were medical, started using street drugs, so heroin and fentanyl on the street, which led to a huge number of overdose and various other problems in local small communities. In the in the UK, we don't have that problem where the NHS hasn't been told to, stop prescribing, but they have been advised to start deprescribing, slowly reducing those prescriptions. So the picture isn't as bad here, obviously. We don't have a big move to online, to street use of these medications, but we do need to start finding more effective treatments for long-term pain. And this is a real challenge that we're going to have as we have a aging population, a lot more chronic pain, a lot more long-term conditions, and we don't have a pill to fix this. So it's about looking at alternative strategies for dealing with pain, unfortunately.
What evidence do you have? What evidence have you had since you've done your thesis that opiate can help or can it not help?
Yeah, great question. So opioids are the best drug we have to treat pain. It's just what type of pain we prescribe them for. So opioids are really important to have access for acute pain, so cancer pain or post-operative pain. So we need to make sure we keep these drugs. So morphine, fentanyl, oxycodone, these are really important drugs for treating chronic pain, for treating acute pain. When it comes to chronic pain, we shouldn't prescribe them. We should prescribe going to the physio or going to a psychologist and sort of lifestyle changes, losing weight, and these sort of other mechanisms to improve pain. Yoga, mindfulness, all of these things are really good for long-term chronic pain. So the evidence is that they do work, and they're really important drugs for acute pain, but they don't work for long-term pain because we get tolerant and used to them, and we need more.
Rosie, did you have a question?
Yeah, first of all,
I've got a question here. So, yeah.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. Some of the sound we couldn't hear very well, but I've got the gist of it. I've got 2 points. One point you mentioned that, if you get people to encourage people to cycle more and stuff like that. Well, thinking what Mayor Khan is doing in London at the moment, I think it's great to reduce pollution and stuff so you get less problems with respiratory stuff. But he doesn't think about the old people that can't, my mother-in-law is 89. He's taken away all the parking in Finchley Road, so she really can't go shopping anymore. He doesn't think about the effects of what he's doing, reverberating in with the older people that can't do such things. I had another point, but I think that's probably enough.
Thanks, Rosie. Yeah, that's a great point. We actually had a seminar last week in Oxford about that exact problem, is saying, cycling isn't for everyone. And there's case studies looking at Copenhagen and the Netherlands around. There actually is a large population in those large elderly population who do like to cycle, but it's not obviously for everyone, particularly in London. That's quite scary to cycle as a young person, let alone as an older person. So that's quite a challenging issue to fix, but that's a big problem. I don't have the answers to that. There was a lady who was at the seminar who was talking about walking and how about 95% of the population can walk, but it's making our roads and our pathways and our streets more friendly for walking, and more friendly for wheelchairs, and more friendly for walking sticks and these issues. So it's a really it's a holistic approach that needs to account for lots of different stakeholders, definitely including the elderly population. So I don't have the answers, but it's a problem.
Okay, we've got time for just one more question. Moving.
When you talk about evidence-based medicine, and you talk about morphine sulfate, opioids, and other things, does acupuncture part parcel of your study?
That's a great question. I often use this as so when we talk about evidence, when it comes to something like acupuncture, I always say, if a patient comes and says, oh, I have chronic pain and I'm using acupuncture and it really works for me, I'm like, that's amazing. Definitely keep that going. Because if it works for you, that's really important that you keep that as part of your multidisciplinary approach to improving pain. When it comes to the evidence, we haven't got strong, large clinical randomized trials on acupuncture. So the evidence is unclear. But if it works for you, I would definitely keep going and keep doing it. It's just when it comes to pain, pain is a really subjective thing, and every single person experiences pain really differently. So it's really hard to do nice trials. It's not like cardiovascular disease or cancer or COVID, where we can do nice trials and randomize people, because my pain might be very different to your pain. And so we don't have good evidence to support it. But when it comes to chronic pain, I say try anything and everything. And if it works for you, do it, because it's such a complex condition that's very personal. So we have evidence-based medicine, but we also have personalized medicine. And chronic pain is one of those things that needs a quite personalized approach.
Thank you. And George, if on behalf of the president, who unfortunately can't be with us today, and the members of the club, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for having come to speak to us. It really was fascinating. And the people in the room will know that everybody was just wrapped here in listening to you. It really was excellent. And the people on the Zoom, you explained it so well, they didn't need your presentation. So
no, it was excellent.
So all went down very well. And the questions that have come have all been interesting. And I think you've been able to add to that. But most of all, I think all of us are privileged to see the Rotary scholars come. We sponsor, host Rotary scholars, and it's always fascinating to see their background and then to see what they do with it. And you've told us your background, you've told us where you've come from, what you've been doing, and what you're going to do. And we really are privileged to have heard that. And you're obviously a very, very busy person, so we're very lucky that you've had time to come and see us, and we do thank you for that. And then, not only doing that, you're then introducing this new program, which will help, as you say, those countries, because we do find that we do get a lot of, although we did have a young lady from Mongolia, which can't be regarded as, I don't think, as a high-income country, and she was able to take advantage of it, but that was a rare thing. And so hopefully you'll introduce more students to this excellent scheme. So on behalf of the President and the members and those on Zoom, I'd like to thank you for your presentation today and present you with a speaker certificate to prove to your students or whoever it is you have to prove to Oxford that you are here. So
thank you so much. That's so kind of go off in my office in Oxford.
Thank you. Two further things. I forgot to say before, the money raised in the room from the collection was £117, which is excellent. And the final toast, which is Rotary and peace the world over.
President, before you go, Almona's report.
Oh, yes, go on.
Thanks.
They're all
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I
standing for it.
So. The screen, but I'm here in spirit. I'd just very like to let you know that past President John Buchanan sadly is back in hospital. He's been really quite unwell, and I gather from Mary, his wife, that this was possibly caused from some form of over-treatment, if there is such a thing. But he is making good progress. We wish him well. We hope he'll be back with us soon. We hope he'll be back home soon.
Yes,
that's my report. I'm sorry that I've disappeared.
No, sorry, I didn't see you there, so I couldn't. Yeah, you're there somewhere, but I can hear you. I can't see you.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
can see you now. You're in the garden or somewhere. But also, I spoke to Mary during the week, and I think John is in good spirits, which is also very important. So that's good. But thank you for telling us that and reminding us. Now we're all stood standing, so we can have the final toast, which is Rotary, Rotary and peace the world over.
Rotary and peace the world over.
I've got to ding the bell, haven't I, to finish the talk.